We've now added a short new segment here for the science team. If any issue has come up, I'm reading here a note, I'm getting notes. If for any science team member to add clarifications or amplifications to anything that came up during the sessions. So if we have, and I've got a specific question here. But do any science team members have things they would like to amplify or clarify? And then I'll ask the specific question I have. The specific question I have is for Mr. White, if you would be available. But we'll ask generally if anybody has something they wish to clarify.
All right, quickly. Yeah, to answer Arun's question, oh yeah, that I forgot that I was unable to answer before. So, let me quickly bring that up. Oh yeah, so sorry. How would exposing people to different political ideas / members of different political parties go to rectifying misconceptions about the other group? The main goal actually is to correct misperceptions about the other group's identities and the composition, rather than misconceptions about their ideologies. That's a mistake on my part. I should have used the term misperceptions to make clear that the main focus is on correcting impressions on the group composition rather than any sort of core ideology.
Thank you. Mr. White, if you'd come on screen, I'll try and phrase the question for you. The question deals with how long of the contact methodology seems to be required. In other words, if you measure how long is somebody in a heterogeneous group according to contact theory, before you start being able to measure the reduction in prejudice or whatever you're trying to deal with in your heterogeneous group. In other words, how long does your contact period seem to take for contact theory to be effective in actually allowing people to change their worldview or their mindset? In other words, what have researchers measured in terms of prejudice reduction after various periods of contact? In other words, how long do you have to do something before that begins to be effective? So, in other words, try and scale the time involved of how this group participation has to work to be effective, or what does the research show on that effectiveness?
Yes, I have some additional information on this, and I prepared a couple of slides. And I wanted to revisit this this set of studies here, and I wanted to first look at the bottom studies to see if they had anything in common in terms of the duration of the contact. And I found that these two took place in Norway and Nigeria, and I figured that they weren't as relevant. So I looked more specifically at this one that's in the box here, and it was in fact a much shorter intervention. It was a panel of speakers of LGBTQ students presenting to a largely heterosexual crowd. And they found that the immediate post-panel results were positive, but they declined in the long term. And the researchers suggested that a longer-term intervention would be more effective in generating a longer-lasting result. And then so I tried looking at I found a study that looked at intergroup contact that occurred over a very long period in the order of years. And it looked at women living in biracial communities who regularly visited members of the other racial group, and they were divided into the categories of living there for 0 to 7, 8 to 19, or 20 plus years. And they found that the duration of living in that community between those three groups had little effect for white women, and in fact slightly worsened the relations among the Black women. And this was controlled for age. But overall, the effects of participating in contact for a longer time in the order of years seems to not make that much of a difference. So then I tried looking at the top, the studies with the highest effect or the largest effect. And they all lasted longer. One of them occurred over a summer, another occurred over half of one school year, and the third one occurred over a period of 2 weeks. And this study also included distant test post-testing where the results remained strong. So this suggests that contact in the order of weeks to months is when it becomes most effective. Remaining in contact with another group for years at a time appears to not have that much of a difference, and an hour-long or couple-hour-long seminar doesn't appear to have that much of an effect. But we should take this with a grain of salt, because this latter study here was done and the participants were younger children. So it is possible that the difference in age had a different effect on how long the results lasted after the fact.
So if the question were phrased as, what is the minimum length of time that you see in the different studies that seems to be required to be effective or useful? Do you have any idea? Obviously, a day-long seminar doesn't seem to be what we would have in mind, but avoiding that issue, what seems to be a standard minimum that one would expect for a program, whether voluntary or mandatory?
It appears to be on the order of weeks to months.
Okay, so if I understand both the pro and con teams proposals, both pro and con team proposals would seem to at least have that duration in mind. Ms. Lim, I have a question for you if you have information on this question. The question for you is this. If a service abroad program, such as an international exchange student, has significant community awareness benefits that work to reduce polarization, could service across the United States, domestic exchange studies that might have a lower cost provide somewhat similar benefits? In other words, to get some of the benefits you've seen in international programs, can you get some of those same benefits with programs that are across the United States?
So I did a little bit of research on this, and I think a big reason why the international studies work very well is because you're in a very alien place. You don't really know what's going on. So I think from what I've seen, to get similar benefits within the same country, you'd really have to go somewhere that was kind of as polar opposite as the place where you are now. Like if we were in Minneapolis, which is a very more liberal place, if you went to like Portland, Oregon, you might not learn as much, but if you went to like somewhere in the South where it's a bit more conservative, then you might learn more. So in reality, it just kind of depends on the location. It can't just be like from New York to California that you would get the same benefits as international, because sometimes even though they can be very coastal places, they still have similar demographics because it is within the same country.
Thank you. Ms. So we just had your questions on your slide 9. I know that was just a few moments ago. I'm not sure if it's fair to ask you right away. Do you had any chance to look at the issues on your slide 9 yet?
Yes, I actually retract my previous statement. The original percentages are percentages compared to the overall sample size of each respective racial group. So when it said like 28.2% of those who surveyed, that's of the population of those who are white. So 28.2% of white the white population that was surveyed were volunteers in that case. I would also like to note that earlier the pro-legal team said that the fiscal benefits were less than the costs. And I want to correct that in that this is not necessarily true. In fact, it was found that the ratio of the fiscal benefits to cost was greater than 1. So in this case, benefits were greater than the costs.
Thank you.